So to go through the presentation, thanks everybody for attending at roughly 7 o'clock. I'll get on to the presentation. So, statutory disclaimer. So the company's strategy is to construct a base case 2,800 tons a day processing plant at Landia project, Nicaragua, producing 100,000 ounces of gold a year. And secondly, to expand our gold with mineral resources towards 5 million ounces of gold, because we're on a pretty prolific district. The investment highlights, this is slide 4. We have reserves. We have a pre-feasibility study out with 80,000 ounces of gold a year, which we can produce over 7.5 years. And that's from a single Landia open pit. We've now got permits for over 1 million ounces of our mineral resources and reserve. That's the main Landia open pit and a high-grade feeder pit, which we announced last week, 120,000. Teaser, but the resource says 8.6 grams. We've got permits also to construct the processing plant and all the associated mine site infrastructure. We can expand that. We held a public consultation for another feeder pit on the 28th of February, called the America feeder pits, 100,000 ounces at just under 4 grams. And we expect that to be permitted imminently. And that gets us towards, through those open pit material, gets us towards 120,000 ounce production for a 7-year period. We can add in underground, 1.2 million ounces. We've got a district play, we believe, of 5 million ounces. In terms of the economics, one way to look at these companies like us pre-construction is on ounces in the ground. We're about $16, $17 an ounce in the ground. So just less than 1% of the current gold price. The high grade means that we're 700 all-in sustaining cash costs. We're relatively undervalued compared to the Canadian peer group. National Bank of Canada did a study recently that had a Canadian average about 3 times higher than Nicaragua, or than our project in Nicaragua. Potential for early cash flow, possibly entering some toll milling opportunities where we don't have to build the mine. We can take the high-grade permitted pits around to nearby mines as spare capacity. And on the resource, we've got, if you add those numbers together, we've got 2.4 million ounces, of which half is indicated, half is inferred, half is open pit, half is underground. The management team, I've been full-time for the last 8 years, but with the company for about 14. I'm ably supported by Dave Crawford, who's been with me for 7 years. Prior to Condor, he was a chief technical officer at, or one of the main technical study directors at Newmont. And he lives very close to Newmont's head office in Denver, Colorado. Isaac Zaria is my general manager. He's been with me for 3 years and worked at Beaker Gold's nearby mine for 6 years. Warren Pratt and Irene Chow. I just say we've got a good team. That's the core of the management team, and we have 4 independent non-exec directors. Going into Nicaragua, these areas in red are our concessions. Landia district is only a 2-hour drive from the airport, so we've got easy access. It's a tarmac road all the way into the project. There's grid power through the project. And there are 3 large producing mines in Nicaragua. Gold's the biggest export. Calibre Mining spent $100 million last year acquiring Beaker Gold's mine. And where you see our Potrillos concession, which we sold for $600,000, I left that on the map because Macu Mining is in the middle of constructing the 4th big commercial mine in the country, which should be ready this year. It's a good address to be. We can own 100%. There's no free carried interest to the government, and you get the concessions for 25 years. Here's Landia project. Importantly, it was a historic mine, produced over 500,000 ounces of gold at 13 grams. The mine closed in 1956. We've doubled the concession package over the last 3 years to 580 square kilometers. If you look at the resource there on the vein system, there are 7 separate resources. The one that we've got permitted, you can see Landia vein set. So the 1.3 million ounces there, the top 900,000 ounces is the pit. If you go to the north, America will be very shortly announcing permits there. And Mestiza, we were permitted last week, was 128.7. That's all quite close together in mining terms. All these areas can be expanded by drilling along strike of the veins and down dip, so underneath the ore bodies. That's Landia vein. There's 2 big veins that go up that valley. And you've got 1.3 million ounces there. We've done studies that if we drill down the ore shoots, we can add another 300,000 ounces beneath it. The PFS numbers you're looking at there were done at $1,250 gold. So obviously they'll look very different at the current 50% higher gold price, or not 40% higher gold price, I should say. But that was just a base case to get us going. The pit, we put 40,000 meters of drilling in. You can see some very good grades there. Draw your attention to the top one of 10 meters over an ounce gold. And the third one highlights its near surface, 25 meters at 7 grams. Here's the permitted mine site infrastructure. So the grey area there is the pit, which I showed you the photo of. And to the north and to the west of that, you've got the waste dump. The processing plant's 1.2 kilometers away, and the tailings is on the other side of the road. And out of that pit, we can get about 600,000 ounces of gold out of that. And we can either mine that in 6 years at 100,000 ounces of gold a year for 6 years, or we can mine it a bit slower. These feeder pits coming in will change that mine scheduling. So I put over the 700,000 permitted production. That's the actual gold amount of gold we'll produce, that we're permitted to produce. Moving forward, this slide 12 talks to the mining studies. So you might have a high-grade resource like on Mestiza of 8.6 grams, but the vein is quite narrow there, so it's 2.2 meters average width. We have to put a dilution skin around it, which means we add another 0.4 meters either side for the waste rock. We have minimum mining widths, but that material of 800,000 tons in Mestiza's case, which we announced last week, the grade fully diluted to the ROM pad or to the mill, it's called mill feed, is 5.7 grams. So that's over $300 a ton for 110,000 ounces of gold. And we're confident America will be permitted, the America pit, because the public consultation was on the same day. And you can see on the numbers there, we would, once that comes through in the next week or so, we'll have 850,000 ounces of mill feed effectively. So just under 800,000 ounces of production if you have a 92% metallurgical recovery. The underground can be added. As I mentioned there, we've got 1.2 million of underground. Here's a map of the 3 vein sets. These squares you can see are 1.5 kilometers. If you look at the processing plant, it's 1.2 kilometers from the main Landia pit. It's a couple of kilometers away from America and 3 or 4 kilometers maximum from Mestiza. So it's all quite close by. We have run a second scenario, which is a minimum capex to avoid share price dilution, maximum cash flow to 1,000 ton a day project, high grade everything. That is on the following slide. So on this slide 14, we're looking at the diluted tonnage. So we're taking the permitted pit of Landia, the big one, and we can take just under 8% of that out. In that example, we've got 387,000 tons at 4.29 grams, 53,000 ounces of gold, so about 50,000 ounces out of it. And we do the same on the mini pits or the smaller pits, and you can see there that we have 1.6 million tons of very high grade 4.6 gram open pitable for 250,000 ounces. The recovered or produced gold would be 225,000 ounces. So that's a 5 years if we wanted to do that scenario. The benefit is that the capex for that, we're doing the studies at the moment. We're kind of ranging capex at 40 million, maybe 50 million. It depends whether it's new equipment or old equipment, second-hand equipment. We've got bids there for 2 processing plants. It's not bids. We've had quotes for 2 processing plants, new ones, and also for second-hand processing plants. So this would throw up an awful lot of cash if we did it in 2 stages, and that's something that we're looking very closely at the moment. Another way to early cash flow is to toll milling, because we've got the permits now. And when America comes through, we'll have 1.1 million ounces of mineral resource reserve permitted for extraction. So quite powerful, the spare capacity over at La Libertad. We've taken samples over to the mill there and to the nearby Earlymore mill, 12 grams. It shows from the principal Landia vein, and great metallurgical recovery. The resource expansion, which really is important to show the route to a 5 million ounce district in today's market. We have 20,000 meters of drill ready targets where we have the drill collars, the piercement points, the drill plans, and that's just in the core area. So where we've already got permits, we can expand that and just add on ounces, another 900,000 ounces, and take that to 3 million. And the other smaller areas, we think one of those, particularly cacao, could be between 500,000 to 1 million ounces. And this gives you an idea on slide 17 beneath the pit. You can, if you can see my mouse there, there's 193 meters. There's 4 drill holes here, all over 10 grams. The widest width was 60 meters true width. So this is beneath the pit. You're looking at a long section of the pit, a high-grade ore shoot at the southern end. So for 200 meters beneath the pit, you've got over 10 gram material and an average width of over 7 meters. So quite a nice wide vein, and that's completely open, so you can expand that further down dip. This is the district scale that we're looking at. We've structurally, we're on 2 major regional faults of Landia Corridor and Drea Corridor, they're called there. When Ross Beatty put his money in, he was keen to show that, demonstrate we have a 5 million ounce district. So we went ahead and completed soil geochemistry, airborne geophysics, structural geological modeling, detailed geological mapping, scout drilling. These are all the things that the big guys want to see in a project. This takes 2-3 years to do. It's groundwork, but and it's something you do in the low times, if you like, or when you're permitting projects, and that's what we've got on done quietly in the background. And we've got some great results. We have 106 kilometers of veining on the surface, which we've either drilled or trenched only about 20% of it. So this is quite a prolific district. And in these epithermal vein systems, you want to see projects that are very structurally controlled, lots of faults, lots of cracks in the Earth's surface that the gold-bearing fluids can come through, and that's what you're seeing on this map. This is just a bit more of the district. The resource, you can see some of the veins are in red, the resources are in blue projected to surface. And it's just showing some of the high grades, 10, 15 kilometers away. There's 53 gram material. In fact, there's another one of about 140 grams, 50 meters away from it. So quite a prolific district. So what are we doing right now? Well, we spent a lot of time gaining a social license to operate up there in the old mining town. We're going through the permitting phase. We're hopefully going to get now 1.1 million ounces permitted. We're fully engineering everything. We've completed about 30% of the tailings storage facility. We have to fully engineer that. We're doing site-wide water management systems, diesel, backup power, plant location and site, mine site optimization. So getting it shovel ready, in a word, so that we hope that this, and buying the land, and we hope that we should start to fence off the land. Well, we're fencing off the land already at the moment. We just bought another 60 hectares 2 weeks ago. And the idea there is to start clearing the land in the 4th quarter of this year and before the end of the year. Environmental and social, I'm just conscious of time, but we're spending about $20,000 a month on the social programs. We have been having various locals that villagers that we've employed in elderly committees and pro-mining groups, youth, water, small business, artisanal miners. We give water directly to 359 households every week, provide healthcare, education initiatives, and so on. So, and that's helped us get these permits. It's paid off. We did have the IFC, part of the World Bank, as a shareholder, and we're fully compliant with the IFC performance standards for a company pre-construction, which is what we should be doing. It de-risks the project, and it helps as you look to get bank debt that's been run in a responsible way. Just more on the social side here. So the investment case, if I just not conclude on this, but just to recap on it, we're now permitted for about 100,000 ounces of gold a year. With the other feeder pit, it'll be near 120. We can take that to 150 to 170,000 ounces of gold a year by adding the underground in. We've got lower quartile costs of 700. We've got a 5 million ounce district, about $16 an ounce in the ground, 1% of the gold price, so it's very high grade. And the appendix is just a little bit on the shares. On slide 27, we have 95 million shares outstanding. Market cap's probably around about £30 million at the moment. In terms of the major shareholders, there's Jim Mellon with 15%. So the directors have 20% of the company. Nicaragua milling at 10%. Ross Beattie's got just under 7%, and a few family offices have about 10–15% between them. So that concludes the presentation.
Now I've had a number of different questions here. Just some good news. I hope I'm reading this correctly. I think your share price and your market cap is actually pretty significantly higher than that, according to my screen here. You're up to 36 million market cap. But the questions we had mostly focused around the processing plants and the options around that. And the first was, and I'll try and read this carefully, what would you expect the debt to equity ratio to be on the capex for purchase of an initial 1,000 ton per day plant for 50,000 ounces per annum?
Well, I think that we're running through the financing mix. I think we could probably get that to 70% debt, 30% equity as the ratio. And within the debt component, there'll be bank debt or development loans and also a gold loan. So the answer to that 70–30 debt to equity ratio.
And then if you go for the smaller processing plant, how easy is it to increase the capacity from, say, 1,000 tons per day to 2,800 tons per day once that cash flow is being generated?
That's a good question. We've looked at this. It's relatively easy. What you have to do is to lay the plant layout, and we have all the land for the plant location. So where the processing plant is, we have all that land. And I was looking at a map of it actually last week, and there's enough for stockpiles for about over 500,000 tons as well, as the accommodation, not the accommodation, the office block next to the plant. So the good thing is we secured the land for that. But your plant layout, you have to lay it out modularly to add additional ball mills or SAG mills as you increase capacity. So it's possible to do. The alternative, another option we're looking at is to look at we're looking very closely at a second-hand mill, and that has a SAG mill and a ball mill, and the SAG mill has a variable drive, a variable speed drive, meaning that you can start it at a lower rate, and you could speed it up if you like, and then add on a ball mill later on. So if we bought that bit of equipment, that particular bit of equipment is about 3,500 tons a day. So we could buy the whole second-hand comminution circuit, which is the crushing and grinding equipment. So we'd have that day one. And then because it's second-hand plant, we think we can buy that at considerably lesser price than if it was brand new. And you have the ability then to start at 1,000 tons a day, or maybe 1,200 or 1,500, depending on what you'd like to do, because the plant's there. And then add on the additional ball mill later on. So there's two ways of doing it.
And I think this question came in after your slide 20, which showed the kind of the list of things that you'd been that you were doing or kind of were in the process of doing, and it was about the key milestones, what the next few things to look out for, and when should investors or potential investors expect to see them?
Yeah. Okay. Well, within the next 2 weeks, the third pit will be permitted. We will announce that. So that'll be significant, because it then means that rather than me saying we'd like to do the 120,000 ounce scenario, or we'd like to do high grade feeder pits, we actually have it all permitted. So that's material. The next part for the rest of this year, we're effectively fully engineering everything. So we'll be updating the market as we fully engineer the tailings, the site infrastructure, so on. We're also buying all the land. And that's kind of most of this year. There could be a possibility of adding a drill rig on at some stage, and that really depends on the gold price. And that the purpose of that would be just to remind people that we've got a prolific district, but we are not currently intending on doing that. This year is de-risk, fully engineer everything, buy the land, fence it off, and clear the site towards the end of the year. I'd like to, as we do that, we're hiring somebody to help with the assess the debt financing packages as we go forward. So we'd like to put that in position. Those would be the main milestones over the next 6 months or so. But what I really would like to be also say is to have a definitive announcement to the market about a definitive capex number, whether it's 40 million or 120 million, because at the moment I'm saying we could do this or that. A definitive capex, and then a clear timeline to first gold pour. So at the moment we've been reviewing our options. Those options now just become a reality when you've got permits, which is a big de-risk in our business.
Yeah, I've just got a couple more. There are a few more, so apologies if we don't get to you. And one was about financing. In the years that we've been doing the events, we've been doing these sort of things for about 8 years now, and we've had a terrible time for junior gold companies in previous years. Has a corner been turned for financing? Do you feel we're finally there somewhere now where you can go out and be better received?
Yeah, well, you're quite right. We've had a 7-year bear market in gold equities. We should just bear that in mind. It's very easy with gold, the physical gold price being up so strong over the last 12 months. But anybody who's actually worked in the industry has had a torrid time of it. Now that's changing. I was at a mining conference, 18 meetings 2 weeks ago. Fund managers are seeing asset allocation into their funds for the first time, I think, in several years. So people have tended to buy the ETFs, they've tended to buy the physical gold, and then they've tended to buy the big producers, the Newmonts of this world and the Barricks and the top 10, because they in the previous cycle, people have reasonably fresh memories. They've been burnt. What we need for gold prices, share prices, to go up for people like us pre-construction is we need the fund managers to be asset allocating into other gold specialist funds and people to want to take on additional risk. And that we're starting to see. So I think the fund managers are getting more money coming in generally, the specialists, and the generalists are asset allocating into the sector, because if you look around the world at the moment, with recession looming, global recessions looming, how many industries are actually going to be paying out dividends and increasing dividends? And that's what the big producers will be doing. So I think it is gold's time. Thankfully, the cycle's with us. We do all need gold to stay even above $1,500 an ounce the next 12 months would be great. And then, as you've heard from your other speakers, they're rapidly repaying their debt. They can pay out dividends, and they can go on the acquisition trail. So money is coming back in the sector, but tentatively.
And the final questions had a number around the toll mining and how realistic it is, and then how quickly you can get onto it, generating cash flow from that. Just talk around that just for a minute too.
Yes, certainly. Well, and like any transaction, it needs two companies to agree terms. So at the moment, Caliber's mines are both suspended in Nicaragua, which they've decided to do for coronavirus reasons. They're suspended the mines for 8 weeks, is what they've indicated on various press conferences. But those would be the two that we would most likely do a deal with. The other, that there is spare capacity. We know that from their reports that, and we've had conversations with them. We're fully permitted. We could look at doing something. Within our company, there are some of the directors who think that actually doing something is, why bother giving away half your grade to somebody else if you can wait 12 months and have it all 100% yourself? So there's that conversation we're doing internally. It's something which is still being discussed between the parties. I'm personally in favor of doing something on the toll milling process because I see the benefits of having production and cash flow. So it's a discussion that's ongoing.
All right. And it's probably unfair to press you too hard on that. Thank you very much for being candid about it. Mark, that's it for us then for this evening. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And again, everybody, thank you very much indeed for your questions.